Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jenna Hamilton and I am your friend who is a labor and delivery nurse. So we can chat about things that you might not know about or just want to know more about to help prepare for your labor, birth, pregnancy, or even help you cope with a pregnancy or birth that didn't go how you wanted. I hope that this kind of just feels like us hanging out and being buddies about stuff. So if these conversations are something that you really enjoy, please like and subscribe. And today, I want to talk about some myths, 5 pregnancy, labor, or birth myths that are totally not true. Or maybe true. I don't know. We'll see. Let's get into it. So one that I hear all the time in pregnancy is that you can tell what sex your baby is by what your belly looks like. That is a load of malarkey. I see bellies of all shapes, kinds, and flavors. I also see babies of all shapes, kinds, and flavors. And there is no rhyme or reason to the sex of the baby and your belly shape. A lot of times people will say, if you're carrying high, it's a girl. If you're carrying low, it's a boy. Malarkey, absolute malarkey. Now, there are plenty of old wives' tales, and I haven't seen any that are specifically true. The best way of knowing is to get tested, whether that is through a blood test or an ultrasound. And you know what? Even ultrasound can be not true. One of my friends that I work with, her name is Amanda. She came in to have her baby, and her baby's name was Kennedy, a beautiful baby girl, Kennedy, and she had her whole nursery planned out and everything. Her baby came out, and her mother said, "Is that a penis?" And it was a penis. And her baby was a boy the whole time. So now his name is Brennan, and he is a boy. But even ultrasound sometimes, very rarely, can be wrong. So please do not think that however you hold your baby in your belly is going to determine what sex your baby is. The next one is anything that you hear that is going to make you go into labor. Just go ahead and have it in your brain that your baby's going to come when you go into labor. That's all you could say. When you go into labor, your baby will eventually come. There is nothing that can put you into labor. Even sometimes being induced doesn't get you into labor, but especially things like spicy food or castor oil. These things are not going to put you into labor. And for the love of all that is holy, please do not do castor oil. Listen to me, my eyeballs. Don't do it. Don't do it. Anything that can cause GI upset, meaning anything that gives you the diarrheas, can cause contractions. And when we say that it can cause contractions, that can mimic signs of labor. And if you're close to labor, sure, could it send you in there? Sure. But it's because you're giving yourself diarrhea. And nobody wants to be in diarrhea before their baby comes. But also castor oil can cause big trouble with your baby. I've seen people do castor oil. They come in, have a baby in distress who has taken a big fat dump in the womb from their own GI upset from everything that's happened. And then they come out, aspirate their own poop, and having big trouble. Please don't do castor oil for the love of all that's holy. Number 3, that when your water breaks, you'll know. So I have seen people who come into the hospital and they're like, I think my water might have broken. Now that could go one of 2 ways. You could say, hey, I think my water's broken, and it actually be pee. That happens all the time, so don't be embarrassed if it is. But also, your water can be broken up high, what we call a high leak, where there's like a little bit of a tear in the sac up high. And so it's not like this big gush, this whoosh of fluid. It's just like a little trickle, but it just won't stop, right? Every time you move or you stand up, you feel a little something. That could be your water. So please go get checked out if you're not sure. I will say with my first baby, I woke up in a puddle. I'm like, oh my good Lord, this is amazing. My water has broken. Wow. And I get up and I call my doctor and they're like, come in. And I call all my family. I'm like, hey, we're going to go have a baby because my water broke. I go through the Bojangles drive-through and get a chicken biscuit and a sweet tea. And I tell the lady at the drive-through, my water has broken. I'm going to have a baby. She wished me all the best. I get there and I peed my pants. So please do not be embarrassed for going in if you peed your pants. But I also know that if your water is broken for a really, really, really long time, that can increase your risk of infection. So if it is broken, it's better to go get it checked out if you're unsure. Huge one that I see is that people do not want to get an epidural because they say that their labor will slow down. This can actually be the opposite. And here's a good way to know if it might be the opposite for you. When you get a contraction and you're no longer able to, not just not able to relax, but you feel your whole body not being able to let go during a contraction, sometimes getting an epidural allows your body to relax to be able to do what it needs to do. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody go 4 or 5 centimeters. We get an epidural and an hour later, we're completely dilated. We may have been 4 or 5 centimeters for hours and hours and hours before, but we get an epidural, they're able to relax, and the baby just comes on down. So it could be that works that way for you. If you get an early epidural, now let's say that you're like, I don't want to feel anything. I'm going in for an induction. My cervix is closed and I want an epidural before we start anything. That is not my most favorite, because motion is lotion in labor. So anything that's going to impede your ability to move can make things go slower. Now, in studies, they've shown that like epidurals increase like your pushing time by maybe like 20 minutes or so. It can increase your pushing time by a smidge, by just a little teeny tiny bit, but it's not going to prolong your labor by any significant amount at all. If you want an epidural, don't let that be a reason that you don't get one. And number 5, my last myth is that once a C-section, always a C-section. Bah, false. Once you have a C-section, is it more difficult to have a vaginal delivery? Sure, but there's a lot of things that go into that, and I'll have a video about that also. But having a vaginal birth after a C-section can be so healing, not just for you mentally, but also for your body. C-sections are very, very, very hard on a person. And having a vaginal birth can be a great option if you've had a C-section before. It's important that you talk to your provider about whether or not you are a good candidate for having a vaginal birth after a C-section. The best time to have a vaginal birth after a C-section is after you've had one C-section, because once you have subsequent C-sections, it is much harder not only to find a provider willing to support you through a vaginal birth after a C-section, but also it can be very hard to accept the risks associated with that, because the more C-sections you have, the riskier it gets to have a vaginal birth after that. It doesn't mean that you can't, it just means it's a little bit more risky. So talk to your provider, find a VBAC supportive provider, find a VBAC supportive hospital, and if that is something you want, it is absolutely something you can have. What are some myths that you have heard that you just don't believe are true, or you want to know if they're true? And like and subscribe, and we will catch you on the next one.